All right, moving right along.
If asked to fill a council vacancy, what would guide your decision most? Selecting someone aligned with your views or choosing someone with a different perspective to strengthen representation and debate?
Yeah, so this is I think this is one of the answers where I feel like I had a pretty good contrast to some of the other candidates. Um, I guess the idea is that you you have an opportunity to fill a seat to replace somebody with a missing element, right? So like I'm an engineer. There's a lot of guys that have financial backgrounds on the council. Maybe it would be good to have somebody with some real estate background. But ultimately, you have an opportunity to say, all right, what's good for everybody in the city, right? Is it good to have this agenda, this political agenda, or this we all want no development, or we all want full development, or we all want some straight idea of something? I think that's just kind of ridiculous. I'm more of the opinion that you want an effective team that's going to be nice, well-rounded. It's going to serve the best interests of the city, and it's going to have a good, well-rounded technical expertise. Otherwise, if everyone's exactly the same, then you're not really benefiting from the missing pieces that you might need, right? So, so the criticism that I've had from that is basically like, well, you're just going to replace somebody who the people voted for with somebody completely contrary to the agenda that was established. And I don't think that's the case. That's not something I'd be looking to do. I think the idea though is that we're lined up either on one team or the other, and if your team won, then your agenda is going to get forward, and if your team lost, your agenda is not going to go forward. And like that's national politics stuff. We don't need to be thinking that way. I think generally speaking, you want to have the alignment of okay, what's an acceptable vision for the city, and that's the alignment that you're going for, right? So it's not so much of like, hey, I want to make sure that we get somebody that's going to vote exactly the way that we want them to vote, because you can argue that might be what happened last time. but it's like you want to build the skill set. You want people to challenge you a little bit so that you're not stuck in your mindset, or maybe just someone at the table is going to say, hey, well, did we think about this? Because you can't possibly know everything. I'm obviously going to look at things from an engineering perspective, like, hey, what technically are our restrictions here, and then how do we figure out how to work past that? If your background's strictly financial, it's pretty much going to be, hey, this is our budget, how are we going to pay for this, and maybe that's your stopping point. But it's like those are basically the only two arguments. There's no beyond that. There's no like, hey, we want this one project down in the peninsula, or we want this one project in North Belmont, so we better make sure we find somebody that's going to approve that project. Like that's not in everyone's best interest, despite the fact that we might frame it that way.
And one of the things I think in the 16 years that I was on the council, we've gone from basically thinking we were nonpartisan, and the elections and the people we've ended up with on our council have tended to be more partisan. So we need to make sure we have that broad base of knowledge.
Yeah, and I guess, and to the same point too, I guess in the 16 years you were on council, I mean, how often did it happen that you had to replace somebody by a council appointment?
We didn't.
Yeah, it's not a frequent occasion, and we had the unfortunate like Charlie had to leave for medical reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and then Richard passed unexpectedly. I mean, those aren't things that we plan for, obviously, and they're I think the idea that needs to be opportunist is probably the wrong way of looking at it. So I don't want it thought of as like, hey, this is great that there's this somebody resigned or had to leave or whatever, and that now we have this opportunity to replace them. Like I don't think that's the case at all. And realistically, I mean, you're talking about a few months maybe until you can reestablish a new
Right.
election. So it's not like, hey, we're going to replace somebody for 3 or 4 months, or 3 or 4 years. I mean, to me, it's we can certainly answer this question, but to me, it's almost like this is something we don't need to spend a lot of time on. It's not that
Yeah,
important.
it really isn't, because in reality, if you're looking at the type of person you should pick, it's somebody who has some knowledge and background more than trying to align with somebody who
Oh yeah,
vacated a seat, which I
yeah,
think
I would
was
agree with
brought up.
that. Yeah, because ultimately, I think the argument is, well, the people voted for that person. You need to replace that person with somebody exactly like that person, and it's like, well, the people hopefully elected that person because they had an expertise to fill the role,
Hmm.
not necessarily an agenda or a mindset, or a political ideology or something like that. I mean, they thought they would be competent. So hopefully you can replace them with somebody competent, should that arise. But
Well, and there was a lot of mention about platforms. In reality, to me, if you're looking at local government, you're talking about water, sewer, infrastructure. You don't necessarily need a platform. You just have some basics that you're looking at.
yeah, so I guess maybe the only platforms that we would have here would be like a pro development or anti
Right.
development, or I mean, I guess everyone says they're for smart development, but I guess we'll get into that as far as what that means because it's kind of all over the place.
Yes.
But yeah,